Confessions at greatesthitsradio.co.uk, but many more subjects. A couple of old classics coming up in today's confession, which comes from Danny. Well, that's what I'm calling him anyway. Thank you, Danny. About 20 years ago, Father Simon, my then girlfriend and I moved into our first new home. It was only a 2-up, 2-down rental, but we loved it. We rubbed along really well back in the day, but it was always ruined by one thing. A visit from the in-laws. Mm-hmm. My girlfriend's parents, let's call them Kevin and Pat, really took a dislike to me. I wasn't good enough for their beloved daughter. I didn't like them much either, to be perfectly honest, so I was quite relaxed about the fact that they didn't like me. Kevin was a retired police officer with a really painful knuckle-crunching handshake, but I never let on that it really hurt. Pat was an ultra-fussy, passive-aggressive type who would say things like, "Oh, you don't heat up your plates before serving food? That's new." And, "What brand of fabric conditioner are you using now?" Knowing perfectly well we didn't use any, which is why they always brought their own towels when they came to stay.
Oh, dear.
Anyway, back to our new house and our new neighbourhood. The best thing was our local swimming pool. A very grand Victorian building, Father Simon, the type with changing cubicles around the side of the pool. I loved swimming. So after work on Friday, I made my first visit to what I was told was an adult swim session. I arrived a few minutes early and joined a large and very friendly group waiting outside. When we were let in, we grabbed a basket for our clothes and went into our separate cubicles. Connoisseurs of this feature will be ahead of me. Trunks on and ready to go, I pulled back the curtain on my cubicle pretty much the same time as everyone else. It was then I noticed something to my absolute horror. All the other swimmers were totally naked.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, of course.
A cheerful and friendly old naked man in his 70s heartily shook my hand and welcomed me to a weekly costumes optional swimming session where newcomers were most welcome. He told me this was one of the most popular naturist events in the area.
Right.
And I was welcome to join many more of their activities, including walking, rock climbing. Look at the view from here. And even bread baking.
Okay.
Well, Father Simon, I was in total shock. I wanted out. So I jumped into the water, did my fastest ever time, completed 20 lengths, made a swift exit. So to my confession. My aforementioned in-laws, Kevin and Pat, were due for a visit, and I was dreading it. Now, they were both very active in their local church group and always organising activities to keep the fellow pensioners healthy and fit. From button collecting, wow, there's a thing, to bowling, they did it all. At this one time, they'd both started a swimming group and they loved it. In fact, they became avid swimmers. So I came up with the great idea that as soon as they arrived at ours on the Friday evening, they should pop along to our local pool to what I had heard was a very popular adult session. I obviously withheld the finer details, and Kevin and Pat heartily agreed it would be a fine idea after what was a tortuous drive north. So once they unloaded their bags, they set off with their costumes rolled tightly into their towels like true professionals. "You won't be needing those," I laughed to myself and sat back and waited. Oh, Father Simon, what can I say? Not long after their car screeched to a stop outside my house. Kevin carefully ushering Pat into my front room, both looking utterly perplexed. She was ashen-faced and seemed to be having a fit of the vapours. An old expression.
Yes.
I think we know what it means. I'll explain it to Holly later.
Thank you.
Kevin looked deeply traumatised, saying he'd never seen anything like it in his whole life.
Wow.
And said he had a good mind to call the police.
Right.
I was really enjoying their meltdown. The sight of so much nakedness had really set them off, and it really took them quite a time to calm down. Kevin said it was made worse by the fact that Pat had only recently had her cataracts done. Sometimes you don't want perfect vision, Father Simon. Anyway, they both agreed they must never speak of this to anyone ever. Much to my utter joy, they decided to go home early the next day, saying something about Kevin needing his beta blockers. I didn't care, I was just pleased to see them go. Anyway, Father Simon, I seek forgiveness for a cruel trick to play to two fine, upstanding members of the community, but they were really annoying in-laws. Luckily, they stopped visiting us after that.
Oh, right.
So all was not lost. Anyway, forgive and forget, Danny. Anyway, thank you, Father Simon, and keep up the forgiveness. Well, we're very
Yeah,
good
nice fade.
on
Yeah.
the crossfade.
Wow.
There. Thank you very much for that one. Anyway, we're revisiting swimming and nudity and in-laws, so many subjects. Sister Holly goes first.
So is Danny still with this girlfriend to this day?
Well,
or
I don't
was
know.
this the start of the end?
I don't know.
I mean, it's really interesting. I do think, though, you playing this cruel trick on your in-laws is just another reason for them to dislike you, really. I know they weren't that great, but maybe it's you. Have you ever thought about that, Danny? Maybe you're the problem. And also...
Passive-aggressive people are very annoying. Though, aren't they?
Well, yeah, but the thing is, hating your in-laws, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again, it's so mainstream. It's a really mainstream opinion to have.
Yeah.
It's not original. And so, for that reason, I'm not forgiving. You shouldn't have sent them to the swimming pool with all the naked people. Of course they're going to hate it.
Right, so it's because it's mainstream?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Brother from another
I
country.
mean, I love that because it's just very funny, isn't it? And also, it's important to say that the clothing was optional, so they were quite well within their rights to keep their clothing on, although they weren't too keen on seeing what else was on offer. So I think, on reflection, people who bring their own towels, what's that about? No, you can't have people staying in your house if they insist on bringing their own towels.
But also, who doesn't use fabric conditioner?
Well, I don't use fabric conditioner.
Really?
No.
Wow.
There's no need for it. Oh, did you get me started on the fabric
Towels are
conditioner?
all rough.
No, we know that's why.
You must
That's
have the
why.
worst
That's what they're
towels
supposed to be.
in
Yeah.
North
Yeah, I
London.
didn't notice how you're supposed to have your towels is a bit rough, just to remind you of living in the jungle. So for that reason, I'm going to forgive.
Right, okay, I thought we'd get there eventually. As the people's verdict, please, do you forgive Danny, yes or no? 61054 first. After 6, hello, good evening, this is Greatest Hits Radio, where just before the news, excuse me, we had a confession from Danny, who was complaining about his in-laws. Anyway, he didn't like it when they came to stay, so he sent them to the local swimming bath's adult swimming session. He didn't tell them, though, it was a costumes optional evening. The in-laws hated it. They never visited again, which he thought was job done. Anyway, the people's verdict is in, and I suspect Matt is going to filter this so that everyone who agrees with him about fabric softener will be included.
Well,
Here we
let's
go.
wait and see whether I am that
Of
transparent.
course you
Because
are.
Kim in Pembroke says, totally forgiven. I'm crying laughing, especially about cataracts. Martin in North Wales says, forgiven. And I agree with Matt, fully. Rough towels exfoliate. Also, Helen says, fabric softener stops your towels absorbing water. Forgiven. Hilarious prank. And Adam from Lichfield says, this was unbearably funny.
So you would rather have, if you went to stay somewhere, you'd
Yes.
rather have cardboard towels.
Correct. Yes.
Basically.
That's what I would rather have. Yes.
Anyway, if you got a confession, we would love to hear it, and we'll exchange it for a smart speaker. Danny gets today's, yours please too, confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. And here we go with another confession. This one is an anonymous confession.
Ooh.
Anon. Let's see where we go. Well, this might echo with some of the things that you're going through at this stressful period.
Right.
Father Simon, my confession goes back many years to when I was working for a sales company within a team of 8 other people. Besides one person, my mate, let's call her Sophie. They're all very nice people, but shall we say slightly on the dull side? Shall we say that?
Ah.
We would have team meetings and the conversation was always as dull as ditch water. Little or no humour. Mostly very sensible stuff making you glaze over. Always after the sell. You get the picture. Anyway, every year around November time,
Uh-huh.
here we are. It's worth a bell. Cease production.
Yeah.
The preparation would start for the dreaded Christmas lunch, and even worse, the plague of Christmas itself, the Secret Santa. Now, I know your listeners may be thinking 2 things. 1, I really hope we get that top radio feature, Secret Santana, again this year.
Yeah, I bet they
So much joy for such little production.
Yeah.
Rude. And 2, who doesn't like a Secret Santa? What fun? Well, not in my team. It was an excuse to receive the most horrendous gifts and pretend that they were marvellous, whilst enduring a 3-hour lunch making small talk with boring people.
Oh dear.
There are only so many re-gifted ceramic brooches and bottles of wine that sat gathering dust in someone's sideboard. Yes, these were the days of sideboards that one person can bear, Father Simon. Can I also add that I'm not prejudiced against sideboards? They've been with us since the 13th century. We, however, have a credenza, an Italian sideboard.
Oh.
Far more stylish, but I digress. Anonymous says, so after years of enduring this festive torture, I hatched a plan. When it was discussed at the November meeting, I asked the team if they would like my daughters, who were then 7 and 8, to take on the Secret Santa. They would make each person a festive label and between them divide them up secretly into envelopes instead of taking names from a hat. Well, yes, how wonderful, said the boring people. What a marvellous festive idea. And this was where my plan came into play. I shared this plan with Sophie, who I mentioned earlier, hoping she would be part of these shenanigans. And oh yes, she couldn't wait. We set a date, we raided our kids' colouring and paint tins, and spent a morning happily sticking and gluing, having fun with glitter, and making gift labels to look as childlike as possible. We then matched each individual with the name of another, thinking of who we knew would be the most awkward for that person to buy a present for, and secured them into an envelope. For example, Bob hated Jim, so he can buy something for him. Lucy had a fling with Sebastian, then they fell out, so that's Lucy sorted. Trevor got promoted instead of Tilly, so Tilly, you know what you're getting. And also, we knew that Graham had started an affair with Terry's wife. So
Right.
Graham was certainly buying for Terry. You get the picture. Anyway, we then posted these to the team members. We made a note of who gave what to whom, and then on the actual gift-sharing day, took delight in the look of pretend joy on people's faces as they opened the dreadful gifts. So, Sophie and I, you should know, never bought a gift for anyone. Instead, we picked mugs out of our own cupboards, simply wrapped them up and gave them to ourselves, and pretended it was a thoughtful gift from someone. This went on for 3 years. Oh, the delight that it gave us. Father Simon, I do not ask for forgiveness for deceiving the team, as it did spice up a bit of a boring ceremony. But I do ask forgiveness for not sharing the tin of sweets that the team gave to the children, for kindly spending time making the labels instead of eating them for myself. Festive greetings. Please can I remain anonymous? Yours, Steve Johnson. Actually, that wasn't a mistake.
Oh, right.
That was a joke.
Oh, right. Oh, I see. Okay.
It's still anonymous. It's
not from Steve Johnson at all. Right.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
although it might be.
Oh, it could be. Could be.
I don't know.
Oh.
Sister Holly, someone has taken malicious, festive fun from a great Christmas tradition.
Yes, I mean, the thing is, he keeps going on about how boring the people are. Oh, they're so dull,
Really
they're so
dull.
boring. But then, I mean, what office? I mean, there seems to be everyone's having an affair, everyone's upset with each other. That sounds like quite a crazy office, really. It's very tame here. So I'm quite surprised. I don't think it's.
Here's to tameness.
Exactly.
It's not everyone having an affair.
They keep saying, "Oh, it's really dull." It's like, in what way? So I think that's a bit strange. Also, it's just not in the Christmas spirit, is it? It's just not in the Christmas spirit. Taking all the sweets for yourself at the end and then putting it and sort of, organising it. It's just a little bit malicious, a little bit devilish, and I don't like that, and so that's why I'm not forgiving. And anonymous, you couldn't put your name to it either. You couldn't even have the guts to do that.
Would you rather work at a racy office?
No, but I'm just saying.
Like Absolute Radio. I think they're
Oh, yeah. Oh, that lot.
Planet Rock. I mean,
Oh, bet.
heavens. Brother from another gutter.
Yes, I think there's a chance here that Anonymous might be pleading too much here, in that he says he hates the Christmas meal and the people I work with are all so dull, and yet is involved in the organisation of that meal and the party as well. So I think he's pleading too much there. And also, yes, I agree with Holly that it seems like it's a fun place to work. Certainly a little bit of spikiness at Christmas dinner. It sounds like fun. That's what Christmas is all about, after all. So, for that reason, because I can't think of anything else, I'm going to forgive.
You were not going to
wasn't I? Yes, I very much did the double bluff there. Everyone thought I was going to not forgive.
Yes.
Turns out, forgiven.
Okay.
Well done, Matt.
So the people's verdict,
Yep.
please. Do you forgive Anonymous? for spicing up the secret Santana. Let us know, 61054, first word is Simon. It's the people's verdict, please. 61054, first word is Simon. Just before the news, we had an anonymous confession.
Yes.
About someone who basically was really, really bored in the office, hated the Christmas works due, hated the Secret Santa, so basically messed it up by pretending to get it done by his kids and making all the embarrassed people who had bad relationships give to those people, and he found it endlessly amusing, as did his chum Sophie. Anyway, but I don't know whether everyone else is going to feel forgiving or not. What have we got in?
Well, forgiveness basically depends on how you feel about Secret Santa. James in Rochdale says, so easy to forgive this one. I can't stand Secret Santa. I don't like the people I work with. Why would I buy them a present they're never going to use and probably don't like? But Jennifer in St Ives says, not forgiven. As Holly says, this completely goes against the Christmas spirit. I love organising Secret Santa. Yes. And we all have such a laugh when we open the gifts over a Christmas lunch. But Michelle in Durham says, forgiven. I can't stand Secret Santa. I'm forced to take part in the office one every year, and I always end up with an old bottle of perfume with a dreadful scent.
You can always do Secret Santa. You can do it online, and it's all very
really?
easy to organise. Oh, yes, it's great fun.
Is it?
We're going to have one this year.
Oh, are we?
No, we're not. I don't think
good.
So. Anyway, thank you very much indeed for those, and you can send in your confessions, please. Whether they've got anything to do with Christmas or not, it's fine. Send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. It's 5:46. Welcome for another confession. This is Wednesday's confession. Another smart speaker to be handed out. Today's goes to Jan. Jan, thank you very much. Talk to Jan in bingo accents. La 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 la. Saturday's Kids. Also the jam.
Yeah.
Setting Sun's just showing you a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of heel, a bit of jam heel. Father Simon, Father Matt. No, that's wrong. Sister Holly in Compassionate Collective. I want to say how wonderful it is to have you, Simon, Matt and the team bubbling out of my wireless again every evening. I miss drive time so much when changes were made by the others. I also think that I should say a huge thank you to Ken, because it was in searching for his new home back in the spring I found Greatest Hits Radio and you all. I've been a listener ever since.
Wow.
So Jan is forgiven. Very good.
Yes.
My confession goes back almost 20 years to my dad's funeral. He surprised us all by passing away a few days before Christmas in 2004 in hospital on that jewel of the South, the Isle of Wight. He'd lived there with Eileen, my stepmother, for many years. For the purposes of this confession, I'm going to call him Alec, because that was his name. Now, as most of the family and extended family lived in, around and beyond London, it was not possible to all get together and make joint arrangements, and I must admit, I was not in the best place at the time to deal with much. However, I offered to choose the music, as I felt I knew Dad's tastes as well as anyone. Jazz had to figure in the proceedings, I felt, so I chose Chris Barber and his jazz band. The piece I chose escapes my memory. Also, Dad was very proud to have completed his national service in the Royal Marines, and as Sunset performed by the Silver Bugles of the Royal Marines Band, it always reduced him to a blubbering, tearful mess. I felt that couldn't be omitted either. So that's in. Then, of course, there was opera. Dad adored his extensive classical album collection and was apt to play his music with the volume at a level high enough to impair the hearing of anyone within 500 yards of his hi-fi. I was reminded of an occasion many years previously when he was listening to, and I was being deafened by, Puccini's La Bohème, when he suddenly announced, "I won this at my funeral." This particular aria was Si mi chiamo Mimi. Chiamo Mimi. I just said that. Which I believe roughly translates as "I'm Mimi and I'm sick of living in this attic." And it's rather lovely. This, I decided, must be the music to which Dad would make his entry into the chapel. Sunset and Chris Barber would follow, though if memory serves, jazz was left out in the end, probably lack of time or something. There would be a hymn or two, but that left me with the closing piece of music. Then I had a flash of brilliance, my light bulb moment. The Goon Show was another love of my dad's life and had to be represented somewhere. What could be better, I thought, than ending the occasion with the Ying Tong Song?
Oh, yeah.
The congregation will love it. So the Ying Tong Song was when the congregation would leave the chapel on a silly and joyful note.
Yes.
So, there we have it. We proceed into the crematorium to Puccini, move through the Royal Marine Silver Bugles to an unfortunate lack of Chris Barber, all things bright and beautiful to reflect Alec's love of animals, then finishing with the Goons. I recorded it all on a tape cassette and handed it to the funeral director, who laughed uproariously at my final choice. How marvellous, he said. Unfortunately, at the time, I wasn't aware of the correct terminology for these things. So rather than using the terms processional and recessional for the entry and exit music, I think I just said something on the lines of coming in and going out.
Yeah.
I didn't consider that what followed really was my fault. I thought I made things sufficiently clear, but somewhere along the line, my light-hearted finale, the Ying Tong song, was moved forward into the proceedings and became the soundtrack to which my father began his slow descent into whatever it was that lay below the chapel.
Oh, yes.
It was played for the committal. The timing was impeccable, so hats off to whoever was in control. As the coffin disappeared, the jolly refrain of ying tong, ying tong, ying tong, yiddle po gave way to the distressing sound of something falling into oblivion, only to crash into some abyss far, far below, like this. Ying tong. Gutted though I was. I sang along bravely and tried to pretend that it was all my idea, really.
Yeah.
But still feeling guilty at not making my intentions clear enough. I seek forgiveness not from Dad, who I suspect was laughing his socks off, nor from the family, nor the funeral director or crematorium official, one of whom must have innocently misconstrued my idea, but to the fine, upstanding people of the Isle of Wight, who came to the funeral having great respect and affection for Alec, and must have been horrified, upset and appalled in equal measure at the dreadful daughter who had sent her dear old dad off in such frivolous and disrespectful manner. I hope, dear friends, that you can find it in your hearts to forgive my obvious lack of foresight and attention to detail. Thank you for reading these outpourings from my heart. Very best wishes. That comes from Jan. Well, I think even the hardest of hearts, Holly, I'm looking at you, is going to forgive here. But let's find out.
Well, you know what? Perhaps I've gone a bit soft, but I actually think I'm going to forgive this, because ultimately, you know, perhaps Alec is looking down. He would have looked down on that and he would have thought that was hilarious and loved it. And he loved the Goon show and he liked the Ying Tong song. So it all matched up, and he probably would have thought it was a real laugh. And so, yeah, it really, with all that involved, I mean, I know it wasn't quite right, but actually people thought it was funny, and people have all sorts at their funeral. So yeah. I think it's good. I'm going to forgive.
I think it would be very funny. A brother from another.
Yes, definitely forgiving. It strikes me that music at funerals is fertile ground for confession. There must be loads of music choices that have gone wrong. And this definitely falls into the category of what he would have wanted. He would have wanted, as he's going down, to have the Ying Tong song. So, and it could have been far worse. Let's be honest, plenty of tracks there that definitely wouldn't fit. So I'm going to forgive.
Okay, so I suspect most people are going to forgive, because Jan was working very hard, and actually the fact that it was just a more memorable departure, not what she intended, but memorable all the same. Forgiveness, I suspect, but it's entirely down to you. The people's verdict, please. On the text, 61054, first word is Simon. Tonight's confession just before the news came from Jan. There was a mix-up with the funeral music cassette for her dad's funeral. And the Goons' Ying Tong song was played to the coffin's final journey. So, just at the crucial moment. Ying Tong. Oh dear. Which was not what Jan had wanted. It was supposed to be exit music as everyone was leaving the church, not the final moment of committal. Anyway, it's made a few people laugh, I think. Jan, thank you very much indeed for the confession. The people's verdict is in.
Everyone forgives tonight. Michael, totally forgiven. Laughed so much, I want the Ying Tong song at my funeral.
It's good, isn't it?
Indeed. Lisa, completely forgiven. My father-in-law also went out to that song, and there was a moment of silence in the church. Then one by one, everyone started giggling. It was the best end that he would have wanted. And Matt says, forgiven. I was a funeral director for a while, and I directed a funeral of a young woman who loved her disco music and had requested Disco Inferno at the crematorium, to which the whole congregation got up and danced as the coffin moved on to be cremated.
All right, very good. If you have a confession, we'd like to see it. confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk.
You can go on the Greatest Hits Radio app.
That's right.
And then you can find Simon Mayo's Daily Confession podcast.
There may be other things to talk about in the new year, but for the moment, that's what you have to do.
Interesting.
Intriguing. You tease us again.
Yes.
Today's confession comes from Mags. There's a certain Roald Dahl quality to this tale.
I like that.
Mags says, Father Simon, Merciful Matt, and Judicious Holly. It's the summer of 2004. My family and I were spending a few days at my great-aunt Morag's house near the sea in North Wales. I was 7 at the time, and middle sister to Molly, who was 11, and Ellie, who was 3. The thought of staying with our great-aunt filled all 3 of us with dread, as we were convinced Morag didn't like children, especially naughty ones. Morag was an elderly spinster who lived alone. She preferred her peace and quiet, and the last thing she'd be able to tolerate is having us 3 staying at her house. My parents knew this, but they still managed to persuade Morag to have us come and stay, and also to get a free holiday at the same time. From the minute we arrived, the complaining began. If we weren't being too loud playing in the garden, it was running around the cottage like mad things. My parents were told by Morag that we were out of control and should be supervised whilst in her house. Well, Mum had a bright idea. If we behaved ourselves for the rest of the day, we would get pancakes with strawberries for dessert that evening. This was always a great treat at home, and so we all agreed to be on our best behaviour. In the meantime, Mum suggested we keep out of Morag's way. I was to help her unpack our food that we'd brought from home, whilst my dad took my 2 sisters to the local park. Well, Father Simon, I was not pleased by this, and I remember sulking all afternoon. What made matters worse was finding out later that Dad had also taken my sisters to the beach to go exploring. Whilst I'm doing tasks in the house, I sat at the dinner table that evening in a foul mood. I refused to eat my vegetables, and I left them on the side of my plate. I could see Morag's beady eyes peering over her glasses at me. She couldn't help but make a remark to my parents about how unruly I was. "What type of manners are you teaching your children?"
What?
She added.
Come on.
She was a space alien.
What?
Dad said to me, I don't know where that came from.
No.
My dad said to me if I didn't eat my vegetables, I would miss out on dessert. The thought of missing my favourite pancakes with strawberries was agonising, but it was a matter of principle. I kept up my protest. I folded my arms and I sat and sulked, refusing to eat another mouthful. Later, Mum brought out the pancakes and strawberries for everyone but me. To sit and watch my family eat my favourite dessert in front of me was absolute torture. To make the pancakes more palatable for my younger sister Ellie, sugar was sprinkled on top. Ellie took a bite, chewed it, and spat it across the table. It went 6 foot at least. Morag looked horrified. My mum was horrified and embarrassed, and immediately apologised to Morag. "This never happens at home. Ellie loves pancakes with strawberries." Mum sprinkled more sugar on the pancake and told Ellie to be a good girl and eat it, or it would be taken away. Ellie took another mouthful and spat it out again. It went 7 foot this time. Most of the chewed pancakes, spit and strawberries landed on Morag's plate. This was a result. And also the final straw. Morag threw down her fork. She told my mum and dad I've never known such obedient and bad-mannered children in my life. At that, she left the table. Chapter 2. Next morning, our bags were packed and we were set off home earlier than planned. Father Simon, this is the part where I have to confess. When unpacking the food that afternoon with my mum, I saw that there were 2 identical containers, one labelled sugar and the other labelled salt. As I was in such a foul mood, I decided to change the labels over. I couldn't have known that my little prank would have had such dire consequences. Not wanting to be blamed for the chaos I had caused, I did manage to swap the labels back after our dinner without being seen. What a clever and conniving little child.
Yes.
Here's the thing. As my family are still unaware today of my involvement in our holiday being cut short, I would like first to ask for forgiveness from my sister Ellie, who must endure countless retellings of that story to our wider family and friends, and forgiveness from Mum and Dad for spoiling their much-needed time away. You'll be pleased to know, that me and my sister have all since grown up and we've become polite and considerate adults, which is enormously reassuring, obviously, but let's see if it actually... Never mind reassurance, Father Simon. Does he get forgiveness? Let's check it with Sister Holly first of all.
No, the thing is about this is that Mags wasn't really the one who actually suffered. The person who suffered the most here was your 3-year-old little sister, Ellie, because she was the one who ate the pancake and unexpectedly had salt on it, which sounds disgusting. And so really, I think that's the reason why I'm not going to forgive, because really, it wasn't even Mags that you were actually punishing in all of this. It was actually Ellie, to be honest. And Mags probably was pleased that you left early, so...
No, it's from Mags, you mean Morag.
Not Morag, that's the one. Mags, Morag, there's so many M's.
Come to my house and you run around like this.
Oh, she had that
Exactly.
voice, yes.
Would you want to stay with me like that?
Definitely not. No.
Brother from another.
I mean, let's be honest here. No one was enjoying this holiday, really, were they? The kids hated the holiday. Morag didn't want them there. Everyone was relieved
Mum
when
and Dad
they
had
left.
it cheap. They had a cheap holiday.
Exactly.
In
It's
other
Mum and
people's
Dad.
misery.
Once again, it's Mum and Dad that we should be directing our fire at. Also, I think, if you're in a mood, I think not eating your vegetables, that's pretty low down the scale of behaving petulantly. And speaking as someone who can bear grudges like an Olympic sport, I would be swimming in medals if bearing grudges were an Olympic sport. I think that's pretty low down the scale. So for that reason, I'm going to forgive.
Imagine if that was basically as far as your protest about life went. I'm
Yes.
not going to eat my
I'm
vegetables.
I'm not going to eat these peas.
No.
People always eat peas. They
Really?
don't count. They don't count.
Oh, right. Not
61054 is our text. Start the message with Simon for the people's verdict. Do you forgive Mags? Yes or no? 61054. First word is Simon. Great Aunt Morag. Anyway, for various reasons, she was in a very bad mood. This is Mags. She swapped the sugar and salt labels, resulting in her sister spitting out her strawberry pancakes at Great Aunt Morag. They ended their holiday slightly earlier, and it's all Mag's fault. The family didn't know until now. The people's verdict is in. Here we go.
So Michael in Liverpool says, absolutely forgiven. Morag sounds like an absolute nightmare. Lindsay in Chester, not forgiven. Ultimately, her little sister suffered as she had to taste the dreadful salty pancakes. Poor girl. And Donna in Chelmsford said, yes, I forgive, as I've done the same thing with salt. When I was a junior trainee as a hairdresser and had to make coffee for a rude customer whom no one liked, I still chuckle now.
Well, I think I think forgiveness.
Yes.
Largely.
Yeah, largely.
You might have a family holiday confession. You might have a confession about your sisters. Mm-hmm. I suspect you probably do. Sugar and salt, great aunts, all that kind of stuff. Family holidays, what do you say? Confessions at Greatest Hits Radio.